Hi, so the thing I'm working on today is I want to put this Patek Philippe 16250 movement, which I have here, and this is the dial for it and the hands. I want to put it in this case. The Patek Philippe that the movement is from is called the Ellipse, and this is a elliptical case made by a company called Fope in Italy. And it's actually a beautiful case. And when I bought the movement, it was without a case. And I thought, someday I'll find a case that was made either as a copy of Patek Philippe or the same inspiration. So let me go through this step by step. The plan is to open up the back of the case so that it's round, like the Patek movement. I need to make a tension ring, a solid, proper tension ring that fits in the crystal. And that's because in order for this movement or this dial to work perfectly, I have to frame it in a tension ring so that you don't see this edge of it. But that also, I think I've tested, and I think that'll be perfect. This tension ring was a mock-up I did, taking the larger tension ring and just cutting it and bending it. And then for the real thing, which I'm going to do now, I figured out what the radius or the circumference was and ordered a different new crystal, Stern Cruise, with the chrome ring, tension ring. And then I'm going to remove this ring and try to fit it in this. So this is kind of, this one has a cracked crystal. So this is my kind of mock-up, so I don't mess up the good one. This one has a good crystal. And then so I have a couple extra Stern Cruise in case the tension ring is not the right size. I got 2 of this 190, so I'll start with that. And then the other thing is I have to modify the stem. I have to modify an existing stem that's similar to the Patek stem to make a longer Patek stem. And that's been a project with the lathe. One thing I've learned is like just go very slow. So I'm going to try to do all that in this video and make a beautiful Patek Philippe Ellipse in a Fope case. So the first step is I want to look at this tension ring. And try to compress it into an ellipse and see if it's the right circumference when it's compressed to fit in there nicely. I'm wondering if I should use a little clamp to do this. I feel like my hands are more gentle than a clamp. I'm going to get the scope going here. think that's good for that. I can put these work parts away. And then I was thinking of just using, everything's going to get cleaned eventually. So I'm not going to worry about fingers right now, except for on the movement. So I think I can just use a graver to open this up. I can kind of see there's concentric rings on here, which I can use as a guide. So that's pretty open now, but I need to touch it up. I think I probably should have done it from the beginning, but just use the Dremel tool just very carefully under the microscope to make it round. Make sure it's 16 millimeters. Okay, that is really close. One more try. Okay, so I need to cut a little slot there. That's lucky that I stopped perfectly. Now I need to cut a little slot for this pin. It's way too big. Okay, so my idea here is to just try this graver, which I actually damaged. So now it's like a saw blade. And normally this would not be the way you would do this, but I don't have a file this narrow. I need to put the dial on it now. Okay, it's pretty obviously too high. So what does that mean? This side could go still. Don't use force. Okay. So I just have to do the stem. Okay, for the stem, this is my second stem. The other one works, but it was pretty sloppy, and I recorded some of it, but I didn't record all of it. So I think it's better to just do it again to make a proper one, or a better one if I can. Just to give you an idea of the scale, because when you see this stuff on the lathe under the microscope, it's hard to conceive of how tiny this is. So this is the original Patek Philippe stem. Luckily, the movement came with a short stem in it, so I have a reference for what the exact dimensions need to be. And then these two are similar enough that I can cut them down on the lathe and with a Arkansa stone for the flat sides to make them work. And the first one I did was like this. It has a kind of long unthreaded period spot here. And then the one I'm going to use now is this one, which has threads all the way down, but it's still long enough. It's longer than the Patek original, and that's longer than I need. But the length I need is somewhere between this and this. So the tools for this are, excuse me, micrometer to take measurements because I'm not going to put it into the watch every time. So I took detailed measurements of all the dimensions, and then I'm going to make the new one fit those dimensions. But so the micrometer, and then this is like a bench micrometer or whatever one I could use while the piece is in the lathe. A pin vise, tweezers, Arkansa stone, and and then the lathe, of course. And something I did on the last one, which I may need to do again, was I used, this is something I got in the stuff from New Mexico gave me. It's a screw undercutter, and it takes a little bit of material off of balance screws, but I'm going to use it for something different, because I had looked at this under the microscope and I saw that it had these carbon cutters that have holes in the center. So let me get under the microscope and I'll explain that bit. So one of the things that I have to do is make the tip pin of the stem smaller. But the other thing I have to do is make this square part shorter. I might be able to do that with the lathe, but in general, the lathe doesn't seem that happy to be cutting something that's square, because it keeps something that's round goes smoothly, something that's square starts, hitting it every time around. So there's something stuck in this thing, but basically this one's too big, the hole in it, you can see. But this one is almost exactly the right size. So I put this in the tailstock of the lathe. I'll take this piece out, put that in the tailstock of the lathe, and then turn this into it. And then these teeth cut away at the square part. So we're going to try to do it without it. And then if we need it, I'll have to come back and I'll have to figure out how to hammer whatever's in there on through with something. Okay. So I just want to go over exactly what is needed. So I'm going to use this is the target. So this dimension right here is 4/10 of a millimeter for the tip, and it needs to be 3.5 of a millimeter, or 35/100ths. And then this is 0.6 millimeter, it needs to be 0.52. And this is 1.2 millimeter, it needs to be 1.1 millimeter. And then this part here needs to be 0.6, and right now it's 0.72. That's the round part at the right below the collar. And this collar needs to be a little bit thinner. So those are the modifications that we need to do on the lathe. And the first one I'm going to do is the square part, because on the lathe I can get a really good angle on this, hold the workpiece really steady, and I can look under it with the stereo magnifiers, and I can try to get that part first, because that was the part that came out the sloppiest last time, because I was doing it in a situation where I didn't have, the workpiece wasn't secure in the lathe. I was doing it here on the bench. All right, so I'll go over to the lathe now. So I just wanted to say I have these cutters which are proper watchmaker gravers, and I have some moist paper towel to wipe up shavings if they come off, of which they will. And but I'd like to clean up the tip of the graver, and some nitrile gloves, because I'm going to try to keep the shavings off of my hands. I have my notes. I have both micrometers, and tweezers and the target stem. And I'm also going to need some tap fluid, which I'll grab in a minute. But for now, I'm going to put the stem in the lathe. And the first thing I'm going to do is the India stone, or sorry, Arkansa stone. So for that, I'm just going to use the tool rest to help me keep it level. So I think it can be out like this. And then I'm going to use binocular loops. I thought I would never use these things, but they're actually great for the lathe because they protect your eyes fully from debris. And stereo is really important, plus they have the parallax correction. I just need to figure out how to get into position here. Now the thing is, you're not going to be able to see this. But basically, I can see underneath. Normally what you would have is there's holes here all the way around, and then there's a piece that you can attach back here that reaches around, and you can hold this in different positions. So you can rotate this to 90-degree positions, hold it, and then use a tool rest that has a roller on it, and you just roll in that position at each position. And we could almost do that just by faking it. Like, you don't, at 90 degrees is not like gear teeth or something super accurate. So we could almost do it by marking this at 90 degrees. Maybe I should do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 90 degrees. So I have some paper tape. Now the first thing I'm going to do is mark the flat sides, so the 90 degrees up positions. Okay, I'm going to mark this with the number 2. I'm going to mark this with the number 3. And then this with the number 4. Now I'm just trying to look, does it look like I got it right? There's one. There's one. Okay. Oh, I know it. I want to try to show you what I see here. So basically, this is my angle of view on this. And then I can hold this, get this into position, and I might end up like putting it like this each time so that I can get a slightly downward angle on the flat edge. But I can basically see this in 3D or in stereo because I have the binocular loop thing on. And then I can just do this to cut away and rotate it, but the numbering is going to help me kind of do the same amount on each side so that it stays square and doesn't become flat on one side or the other. And these are the holes I was talking about that normally, or not normally, if you have the accessory, you can pin it. You have to pay attention to the holes in the first place and mark them. It looks like somebody may have marked holes here with scratches, which is not a good idea, but you could mark the holes at 90 degrees and then kind of quickly go between each position. But this is my plan for now. So if I'm going to start with the number 1 facing me, that's arbitrary what's what. So I'm going to start with number 1, try to get this flat. Try to get, I think I need to come up with the chair. Is that the number 1? Yeah. Okay, I can see something's happening. So I'm going to go to number 2. Number 3. And then number 4. Number 1 again. Number 2 again, 2. Number 3. See, now I would have gotten confused, but I could go to number 4. Okay, I think I can kind of see which sides are a little bit thicker than others. Okay, I'm going to say that that's good enough. Well, actually, I'm going to measure it again. Let's go to the other bench, check it out there. Because I also need to reduce the length, overall length of this thing. Okay, so okay, so what we want is 5.2 And we have 5.2 right around this zone. See how it's a little bit tapered. So I need to take off more up in this zone because this is measuring 5.5, 5.6, 5.6. And just to remind myself what we started with, 6.0. So I'm going to try to do a little bit here at this bench because it's really hard to measure it over there. Keep measuring it while it's on the... Oh wait, is that the right one? That's my source. Patek. So let's see if I can actually do this. You can see also, oh wait, I need to get this there. Really difficult to keep it square. Just want to check 0 on this. Everything I did just barely had any impact at all. Except for I feel like I keep making the tip square. But the tip, most of the tip's going to come off, so it doesn't really matter. What I'm trying to do is hit one side and then rotate it 180 so I can see what I just did and then try to be square relative to that. That's pretty damn close. I think that's going to do it. Now, that means back to the lathe. Oh no. So the next thing is the length. Let me get the card with the data. So this is pretty efficient at reducing the length. Now it's interesting, I haven't done any lathe work yet. This is all just like hand work. But basically, that's good. See, this has to come down to this diameter, which is 0.35, and it has to come back to this plane here, so that square stuff has to come off. And then it doesn't look like it, but this is actually like 1.2 millimeter, and this is 1.1, the diameter of this here, 1.1, 1.2. That has to come down too, and then I might have to smooth out this area, but I think that'll be all right the way it is. So it's mostly bringing this down to 0.35. 0.35, 1.1. So this needs to be 0.35, but it's 0.4 right now. And this needs to be 1.1, but it's 1.2 right now. Okay, so stick that in there. This time we're not going to pay attention to these numbers because they don't matter for just using the lathe, but I need to get the tool rest in a good position. I'm going to try to wear gloves, but we'll see how that works out. I want to get the workpiece out just a hair away from the collet. One thing I've learned is like just go very slow. In terms of cutting, like it's cutting, like there's no rush. Okay, so I'm just looking at my hands. I don't really see any metal on the hands. Just want to do that test to be able to say kind of, is it necessary to wear gloves or not? I think that's fine, but the other thing is, can I use this burnisher a little bit? Okay, now I might have done too much, but that's the best I'm able to do on this one for now. So the metal bits, I think, I'm still concerned about metal bits. The gloves were not like covered with them or anything. It's just random. It just takes one to go in your eye, and it's not a good thing. Okay, so that's the reference. That's the one I did. And this is what I started with. So I think it's pretty clear. One difference is this is round here and it's kind of not so round on this. In theory, it would always have probably had little dents in it, but I took it further than I probably should have. This ring is a little bit thicker on mine, which might be a problem. And then we can do some measurements because this actually looks a little bit bigger than this, but not as big as that. So I guess let me try the measurement with the microscope. That needs to be 110. Oh, it's actually 108. So that's good. Tip on my new one is 34, 35. I think that's going to be good. Now this might be more of a problem. This is 54 up there, and down here it's 52. So like I said, this is the second one that I did, and the issue with the first one is that when I get to a point of fully wound, it starts to slip, and that slipping I'm pretty sure is because it's too rounded, and so it just starts slipping. The square starts slipping within the square center of the wheel that it's in, the gear that it's in. So I'm winding this now. Now it seems fully wound. See that loud? Shouldn't do that. I think that's the gear slipping inside. If not, then the watch is made to be overwound or something, but I don't think so. So I wanted to remove the stem, try the new one, and then cut the new one down to length and reinstall it. And something that I really don't enjoy here is opening this case back. Because every time you open a soft metal case back, it's not great. You can see a worn hallmark for silver there. It's a flower. Okay, now the movement is in the case back. I need to put on finger cuts. And then I need a very small screwdriver, think it's 0.6. One of the things, the finger cots make it much harder to do this type of thing. Because these anyway are slippery. Okay, so now I can immediately try my new one, just see if it goes in. Okay, so that's better. See, when this is fully wound, and at least without a crown on there, it resists overwinding. So I think it's not slipping. Now I need to take it out again and cut it to length. So I can use the pin vise to remove the old one. I can also show you, I guess the old one was just too small. Can compare the two. Interestingly, this ring I made smaller on the first one. Also, you can see how messed up this pin is. It's like practically square. Okay, so now I need to cut this new one to the right length. Is it possible? This cutter won't work because I need to be further up in the jaw. Okay. The moment of truth. Oh, it's considerably too long, which is good because I need to get rid of the damage I did to the thread there. I wasn't thinking about that. You've got to leave a little bit. I kind of unconsciously did give myself a little bit of wiggle room there. Now I have to be careful not to overdo it on this. Oh, I know what I should do. I don't want to damage my crown, so can use my screw plate to make sure it's tapped correctly. I think it's this one. Uh-oh. Now, chances are it's still too long, but step by step. Okay, I'm going to go with that because I felt like the first one was a little bit too short, actually. And let me think about that. Yeah. So the other thing is finger cuts. Here's what I want to know. Is there any debris? I think for the most part, anything that came off just kind of stuck on the India stone. So now I need to put the stem, the crown on the stem. Okay, there's our finished crown and stem. So now it's time to recase the watch. So the first thing I have to do is put the stem back in the movement. You can see we got a little bit of space there, which is good. I need to hold it in a position where I can apply a little bit of pressure to the stem while I poke the stem release. There we go. And then I'll check it for dust. And then this case, this stem has a little spring-loaded cover, which is nice. It needs to be pushed back for the recasing. See a bit of fiber there. And I want to check the position of the tension ring. It looks good. You can see it's kind of down in there. This is important, and it may be that it moves too easily. I may have to eventually figure out a way to fix it at that depth. But for now, I'm going to leave it the way it is and see how long it survives. Okay, so you know what? I can't do this with finger cuts on. I'm done touching the movement, but these are too slippery to do this delicate operation. There's a tiny bit of room for rotation of these things as it goes in. And I want it all to be perfectly straight, so that's why I'm taking some time. Once you hear that snap, you're locked into whatever position that went in. So let's check the setting. Okay, so we've got time setting, winding, it's got a full wind already, and that's it. Beautiful Patek Philippe ellipse. Okay, so the thing I want to do was I want to polish it a little bit. So I'm going to use this Bergeon silver polishing cloth. Is there just one in here? This is probably what you should never do if you have a precious metal watch. If you polish it all the time, you eventually destroy a lot of its value. But we're in a special situation here. Got to make it beautiful for Valentine's Day. now I'll show you the Fope logo, the finished watch, profile view, and then I'll put it in this box. And there it is. So one thing that's interesting about this watch it's the 16250 is the movement that's in Patek Philippe's most famous watch that was given to or bought by Queen Elizabeth. And Nico Leonard said that watch is worth, he said it's the most valuable watch in the world. Now that's because it was Queen Elizabeth's, not because it's Patek Philippe. But I think this is kind of cool because it's, for me, this is more beautiful than, you know, a diamond encrusted version of the same watch by the same manufacturer. And even the case, I think, is cool because it's a beautiful case. And it's not an expensive case, so it's understated, but it also, I don't think anybody would look at this watch and go, oh, that's not a beautiful watch. It is a beautiful watch. And it's probably the least expensive Patek Philippe around, perhaps ever. But it doesn't, that doesn't affect its beauty and its meaning to me, and the kind of joy of turning it into a restoration project that turned out successfully. All right, thanks for watching.